I always had a penchant for the abandoned fragments of history, the lost tales whispered by the wind across the desolate ruins. That's how I found myself in the depths of the high Sierras, tracing the steps of an expedition that vanished in the 1920s. Local legend spoke of a cave system where they last camped, a place villagers steered clear from, whispering of curses and creatures lurking in the eternal dark. I arrived at the entrance on a cold autumn morning, the cave mouth yawning wide, like the jaws of some colossal beast. My camera and lights were ready. I was determined to capture whatever secrets lay hidden within. The air was stale, and the only sound was the crunch of my boots on the gravel. Hours into the cave, I stumbled upon an old, leather-bound canister wedged between two stalagmites. Excitement surged through me as I recognized the markings of the old film reels used by explorers of the era. The film could be the last remnants of the lost expedition. I camped by the entrance of the cave that night, my portable viewer and editor set up under the dim glow of the lantern. The film was fragile, but after some careful handling, I threaded it through the viewer. The flickering light began to dance, and grainy images sprang to life. The footage was mesmerizing. It showed a group of 5, their faces etched with both determination and the shadows of fear. They delved deeper into the caves, their lanterns casting eerie shadows on the walls. Then, something shifted. The camera caught glimpses of movements, not human, something else. The crew's pace quickened, their glances nervously thrown over shoulders. Abruptly, the film showed them entering a cavern so vast that their lanterns couldn't find the walls. The camera panned around, and for a moment, it captured something in the distance, something watching. A pair of luminous, unblinking eyes suspended in the darkness. The crew started to panic, the footage becoming shaky as they hurried back the way they came. Screams echoed in the cavern, their source unseen. Then, just as suddenly, the footage jerked to a stop. The film ran out, the final frames consumed by the viewer. I sat back, heart pounding in the silence of the cave. The lantern flickered as if catching the dread in the air. A rational part of me wanted to pack up and leave, to dismiss the footage as a trick of shadow and fear. But something kept me there, rooted in the cold ground. I decided to explore further into the cave the next day, driven by a need to understand what had happened. With each step deeper into the earth, the air grew colder, heavier. Eventually, I found the cavern from the film, vast and empty. My light couldn't find the walls. As I panned around, heart in my throat, my own camera captured it too. Those watching eyes in the distance, glowing faintly. I stood frozen, the realization dawning on me that the expedition had never left this place. They had become part of it, swallowed by the darkness and whatever resided within it. The eyes blinked, a slow, deliberate motion. I turned and ran, the sound of my breath loud in my ears. Behind me, the echo of something large stirring filled the cavern. I emerged from the cave as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground. I didn't look back. The footage I had captured remained unwatched, a sinister reminder of the unknown that lurks in forgotten places. Back in the safety of daylight, the terror of the cave felt distant, almost unreal. Yet, whenever darkness falls, I find myself staring into the shadows, half expecting to see those luminous eyes watching me from the dark, reminding me that some mysteries are better left unsolved. I have always been drawn to the peculiar and unnerving, which is probably why I ended up booking a room in the notoriously eerie Hemlock Hotel during my visit to the quaint, fog-laden town of Willow's End. I was given room 712, which I later learned shared a wall with the infamous room 713, a room permanently locked and rumored to be haunted. On my first night, as the clock ticked past midnight, the sound of distant, agonized screams pierced the silence. I jumped from my bed, pressing my ear against the cold wall. The cries, unmistakably human, emanated from room 713. Sleep eluded me that night, and my inquiries the next morning were met with tight-lipped smiles and hasty subject changes by the hotel staff. The next night, the screams returned, louder and more desperate than before. I called the front desk, my voice trembling with fear, but the line crackled dead before anyone answered. Driven by a mixture of terror and intrigue, I left my room to investigate. The dimly lit hallway stretched ominously before me, the carpet muffling my steps. As I approached room 713, I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. The door was slightly ajar. Hesitant but compelled, I pushed it open. The room was shrouded in darkness, save for the moonlight slicing through the grimy window. Dust motes danced in the silvery beams, and the room smelled of decay and old secrets. My eyes adjusted, and I glimpsed the outline of a figure huddled in the corner. A cold draft swept through the room, carrying a whisper. "Help me." I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and flicked on the light switch. The room illuminated, revealing not the figure I expected, but an antiquated tape recorder, its reels spinning eerily. Confused, I approached it, noticing a plethora of tiny scratches marking the play button, as though someone had frantically pressed it repeatedly. Picking up the recorder, I inspected it. A label on the side read, "Play Me." With trembling hands, I pressed play. A woman's voice, cracked and whispering, filled the room. "They're watching you now," she said, "just like they watched me. Leave before it's too late." The door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness again. I spun around, heart racing, and scrambled for the door, finding it locked. Panic set in as the temperature dropped, my breath turning to mist. The walls seemed to close in, and the screaming resumed, louder now, surrounding me. It wasn't coming from the tape. It was echoing all around me, as if the room itself were alive with torment. Suddenly, the screams cut off, and the voice from the recorder whispered right into my ear, so close I could almost feel the breath. "Now you are part of room 713. Light flickered back on. The door swung open, and I rushed out into the hallway, gasping for air. No one was around, and everything was eerily silent. I packed my bags that night and checked out, leaving behind the shadows of room 713. But even now, in the quiet of the night, I sometimes hear the faint echo of screams, and I wonder if part of me never left that room. I had always known Ashford Manor carried secrets in its shadows. They clung to the tapestries and whispered through the corridors like the ghosts of a bygone era. Born the eldest, I grew under the burden of an inherited curse or gift, depending on who you asked in the family tree. My father, before his untimely demise, had seen the specter of our ancient ancestor, Lord Geoffrey Ashford, one stormy night. The apparition foretold my father's death by water, a prophecy that came to pass when his car veered off a bridge into the river below. Every eldest child of the manor endured this chilling rite of passage, awaiting their turn as they came of age. Tonight was my night. As tradition dictated, I ventured alone to the crumbling family chapel at midnight, the very place where countless Ashfords had faced their fate. The air was thick with the musk of mildew and the oppressive weight of many generations' gazes upon me. Candlelight flickered, casting long shadows that danced upon the stone walls. The clock told 12, and the flame of my candle stuttered. A chill swept through the chapel, despite the stagnant summer air outside. Then he appeared before the altar, a figure shrouded more in darkness than in light, his face obscured beneath the hood of his tattered cloak. Thomas Ashford. His voice was a serpent's hiss. Beware the hand that feeds, for it also strangles. This message was far more cryptic than any past prophecy, devoid of the usual clarity on death's method. My heart raced as the apparition pointed a skeletal finger at me before dissolving into the ether, leaving me in suffocating silence. Days turned into weeks, and I became obsessed with deciphering the prophecy. I trusted no one, for the specter's words suggested betrayal. My meals were prepared by myself alone. My once close relationship with my siblings and the manor staff grew strained and cold. I saw potential threats in every shadow, every extended hand. The turning point came one dismal evening when my younger brother, Michael, asked to meet me in the library. I found him there, surrounded by ancient tomes about our family's history. His face was pale, his eyes rimmed with red from sleepless nights. "Thomas, I need to show you something," he said, his voice trembling as he handed me a yellowed piece of parchment. It was a letter dated back to the times of Lord Geoffrey Ashford, the first to receive the omen. As I read, a horrible understanding dawned upon me. The letter detailed a curse, not a blessing as we had been led to believe. Each apparition was not merely a predictor, but a puppeteer, sowing paranoia and discord to weaken the Ashford line, pitting family member against family member. Michael looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. "Thomas, I think we are in danger, not from each other, but from the legacy itself." I dropped the letter as realization washed over me. The hand that feeds was not one of kinship, but the very legacy of Ashford Manor itself. It had nurtured us with history and tradition, only to strangle us with suspicions and curses. The following days, we worked together, poring over every book, every artifact, seeking a way to break the cycle. Our efforts culminated on the next stormy night when, armed with ancient rites and newfound resolve, we confronted the malevolent force during its next visitation. As lightning illuminated the chapel, we confronted not just a specter, but a manifestation of the manor's cursed legacy. Words of binding and banishment echoed through the hallowed walls, and with each verse, the apparition wailed and writhed, its form flickering like a flame in the wind. When dawn broke, the specter was gone. Whether we had banished it for good, we could not say. But one thing was clear. We had altered the course of the Ashford legacy. The omen of Ashford Manor no longer haunted us, and in its silence, there was a tentative hope. Perhaps, in this generation, the cycle was broken, or perhaps it merely awaited new shadows from which to emerge. Regardless, Michael and I knew our bond, forged in the fire of revelation and resistance, would stand vigilant against whatever darkness might come. As I sit here, penning this account, I wonder about the true nature of omens. Are they predestined, or are they made through our actions? For now, the halls of Ashford Manor are quiet, but we remain watchful, knowing well that some shadows might yet linger, waiting to be cast.